The glass shattered before the gunshot registered in his ears. Daniel Mercer hit the floor, his body moving on instinct before his mind caught up. Splinters of his living room window rained over him as the second shot punched through the wall above his head. He stayed low, heart hammering against his ribs, his breath coming in sharp, controlled bursts. Asterisk not here. Not now. Asterisk. He hadn't expected it to happen like this. Not in broad daylight. Not in his own home. The street outside was quiet. Too quiet. No screams, no panicked footsteps. Just the distant hum of a lawnmower and the rustle of leaves in the wind. Whoever had taken the shot wasn't sticking around to finish the job. This wasn't an assassination attempt. It was a message. Daniel stayed down, listening, his fingers brushing against the grip of the pistol tucked beneath the coffee table. He didn't pull it out. Not yet. Instead, he focused on the silence, on the absence of movement outside. Then his phone buzzed. A single text lit up the screen. You should have walked away. The number was blocked. Daniel exhaled slowly, his jaw tightening. He knew who it was. Or at least, he knew who it had to be. Because there was only one person who would go this far. Only one person who knew how far to push him. And that was the worst part. Because that person used to be his friend. The police took their time arriving. Daniel sat on his porch steps, watching as the officers moved through his house with detached professionalism. They asked questions, routine ones, the kind meant to assess whether he was a victim or a problem. He answered in clipped, precise sentences, giving them just enough to file a report, but not enough to dig deeper. Any idea who might have done this, Mr. Mercer? The officer, Detective Ruiz, according to his badge, had the careful tone of a man who already suspected the answer. Daniel kept his expression neutral. No. Ruiz's gaze lingered a second too long before he nodded. We'll check for cameras in the area. In the meantime, you might want to consider staying somewhere else. Daniel didn't respond. They both knew he wasn't going to run. As the officers wrapped up, a sleek black sedan pulled up to the curb. The driver's side door opened, and a man in a tailored suit stepped out. Daniel didn't need to see his face to know who it was. Ethan Cole, his former teammate, his former brother-in-arms. And now, apparently, the man who'd just sent him a bullet-riddled warning. Ethan didn't approach immediately. He leaned against the car, arms crossed, watching the officers with the calm confidence of someone who knew they wouldn't touch him. Daniel stood slowly, his muscles coiled, his pulse steady. Ruiz glanced between them, sensing the tension. You know this guy? Daniel kept his eyes on Ethan. Yeah. Friend of yours? Daniel's voice was ice. Not anymore. Ethan smirked. And that was all the confirmation Daniel needed. The coffee shop was neutral ground. Or at least, it was supposed to be. Daniel chose the corner booth, his back to the wall, his line of sight clear to every exit. Old habits died hard. Ethan arrived 5 minutes late, because of course he did. He slid into the seat across from Daniel like nothing had changed, like they were still the same two soldiers who'd once had each other's backs in hellholes halfway across the world. But everything had changed. You look like hell, Ethan said, stirring his coffee. Daniel didn't touch his drink. Cut the crap. Why'd you do it? Ethan raised an eyebrow. Do what? The shots. The text. Daniel's voice was low, controlled. You're not stupid enough to think I wouldn't figure it out. Ethan took a slow sip, his expression unreadable. Maybe I wanted you to. Daniel studied him. The expensive watch, the perfectly pressed suit, the cold calculation in his eyes. This wasn't the Ethan he remembered. The Ethan he'd known would have never needed to send a warning. He would have just pulled the trigger. This about the case? Daniel asked. Ethan's smile didn't reach his eyes. What case? Daniel leaned forward. Don't play dumb. I know you're working with them. Ethan chuckled. You always did see conspiracies everywhere. And you always lied to my face. The air between them thickened. A barista laughed behind the counter. Somewhere, a spoon clinked against porcelain. Normal sounds in a normal place. But nothing about this was normal. Ethan set his cup down with deliberate calm. Walk away, Daniel. Or what? Ethan met his gaze. Or the next shot won't miss. Daniel didn't flinch. You'd really do it? After everything. For the first time, something flickered in Ethan's expression, something raw, something real. But it was gone before Daniel could name it. This isn't personal, Ethan said. Daniel almost laughed. Yeah, it is. Ethan stood, adjusting his cuffs. Last chance. Daniel didn't move. I'm not backing down. Ethan nodded. as if he'd expected nothing less. Then he turned and walked out, leaving Daniel alone with the bitter taste of betrayal and the unshakable certainty of one thing. This was just the beginning, and the next shot wouldn't miss. The rain started just as Daniel reached his car. Fat, heavy drops splattered against the windshield, distorting the streetlights into smears of gold. He sat behind the wheel for a long moment, fingers tapping a slow rhythm against the leather grip of the steering wheel. His breath fogged the glass in front of him. Ethan's warning hung in the air between them, even though he was gone. Walk away. Daniel clenched his jaw. He'd walked away from enough things in his life. The military, the government, the lies. He wasn't walking away from this. His phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a blocked number. The name on the screen made his stomach tighten. Lena Carter. He hesitated before answering. Lena. Her voice was sharp, clipped. They're watching your apartment. Daniel's grip on the phone tightened. Who? You know who. A pause. Static crackled between them, the kind that didn't come from a bad connection. Meet me at the old place. 20 minutes. The line went dead before he could respond. Daniel exhaled slowly, then started the engine. The old place was a diner off Route 9, the kind of spot that had been forgotten by time. Flickering neon, cracked vinyl booths, coffee that tasted like burnt tires. They'd used it as a meet-up during their last op together, back when they'd still trusted each other. Lena was already there when he arrived, sitting in the far corner, her back to the wall. She hadn't changed much, still the same sharp green eyes, the same calculated stillness in the way she held herself. But there was something different now, a tension in her shoulders that hadn't been there before. Daniel slid into the booth across from her. You're working with him. Lena didn't flinch. I'm not. Then how'd you know about the shooters? She pushed a manila envelope across the table. Because I've been tracking them too. Daniel didn't touch it. Why? Lena's fingers tapped once against the envelope. Because Ethan's not the one who sent them. The words settled between them like a lit fuse. Daniel studied her face, looking for the lie. He didn't find it. Slowly, he opened the envelope. Inside were photographs. Surveillance shots. Ethan meeting with men in dark suits. Ethan standing outside a corporate building Daniel recognized. Halcyon Group. His blood went cold. When were these taken? Last week. Lena's voice was low. He's been working with them for months. Daniel flipped through the photos, each one tightening the knot in his chest. Halcyon was a private military contractor, one with enough money and influence to make problems disappear, including problems like him. He's not just warning you off, Lena said. He's setting you up. Daniel's head snapped up. For what? Lena met his gaze. For murder. The rain had turned into a downpour by the time they left the diner. Water sluiced down the streets, turning the pavement into a black mirror. Daniel walked beside Lena, shoulders hunched against the cold. You got proof. She handed him a flash drive. Everything's on here. Financial records. Emails. Enough to bury him. Daniel pocketed it. Why give it to me? Lena stopped walking. Because you're the only one he won't see coming. The streetlight above them flickered, casting shadows across her face. For a second, she looked almost regretful. Then she turned and walked away, disappearing into the rain. Daniel stood there, water soaking through his jacket, the weight of the flash drive heavy in his pocket. He had two choices. Walk away, like Ethan wanted, or burn it all down. His apartment was exactly as he'd left it. Broken glass still littered the floor. The bullet holes in the wall stared back at him like accusing eyes. Daniel locked the door behind him, then moved to the closet. Inside, behind a false panel, was a safe. He punched in the code, the mechanical click echoing in the quiet. The safe opened. Inside was a pistol, a stack of cash, and a single dog tag, not his. He picked up the dog tag, running his thumb over the stamped letters. Cole E. A lifetime ago, he'd promised to return it. Now, he wasn't sure he'd get the chance. Daniel took the gun, checked the magazine, then slid it into his waistband. He had one last stop to make. The Halcyon Group building loomed over the financial district, all steel and glass, a monument to power. Daniel stood across the street, watching the entrance. Security was tight, armed guards, keycard access, cameras at every angle. He didn't care. He knew how to get in. Because Ethan had shown him. Back when they'd still been brothers. Daniel crossed the street, his footsteps silent against the wet pavement. The guards never saw him coming. The security guard at the Halcyon Group side entrance never had a chance. Daniel moved like a shadow, one arm locking around the man's throat while the other pressed the muzzle of his pistol against his ribs. The guard stiffened, then went limp as Daniel applied just enough pressure to cut off consciousness without killing him. He dragged the unconscious man behind a maintenance shed, relieved him of his keycard and radio, then slipped through the steel door before it could click shut behind him. The service corridor was dimly lit, the hum of industrial air conditioning vibrating through the walls. Daniel moved quickly but carefully, avoiding the cameras he knew would be mounted at every junction. Ethan had once joked about Halcyon's security during a drunken night years ago, like robbing a bank with the blueprints in your hand, and Daniel had committed every detail to memory. Now, that offhand comment was the only reason he'd made it this far. A voice crackled over the stolen radio. "Bravo team, sweep the east perimeter." Daniel froze. They were already looking for him. He ducked into an alcove as footsteps approached. Two guards passed by, rifles slung across their chests, their faces set in professional boredom. They didn't glance his way. Once they'd turned the corner, Daniel exhaled and moved deeper into the building. The elevator required a keycard and biometric scan, but the stairwell was only guarded by a simple keypad lock. He punched in the override code Ethan had once used, *1123, the same as his old apartment door *, and the door clicked open. The stairs were silent. His footsteps echoed faintly as he ascended, floor by floor, toward the executive level. His hand stayed near his weapon, his senses hyper-alert. Every shadow could hide an ambush. Every corner could be a trap. At the 28th floor landing, he paused. Voices filtered through the door. "Asset is compromised." Cole confirmed it. "Then terminate the contract." Clean and quiet. Daniel recognized the second voice. Richard Voss, Halcyon CEO. A third voice spoke, colder than the others. "And Mercer?" There was a pause. Then Voss's reply, smooth as polished steel, "Collateral damage." Daniel's fingers tightened around the pistol grip. He'd expected betrayal, but hearing it laid out so clinically sent a fresh wave of fury through him. These men were discussing his death like it was a line item in a budget report. The door handle turned before he could move. Daniel barely had time to press himself against the wall as a man in a tailored suit stepped out. Their eyes met. Recognition flashed across the man's face. Halcyon's head of security, Marcus Riel, a former CIA operative, a man Daniel had crossed paths with in darker days. Riel's hand went to his holster. Daniel moved first. The silence shot caught Riel in the throat. The man crumpled without a sound, blood spreading across his pristine white collar. Daniel caught him before he hit the ground, dragging the body back into the stairwell. Boots pounded down the hallway beyond the door. Shouted orders. They'd heard something. Daniel stripped Riel's keycard and sidearm, then took the stairs two at a time upward. Gunfire erupted below him, bullets punching holes through the metal steps where he'd just been. He burst onto the 30th floor shoulder first, rolling to his feet in a crouch. The executive suite stretched before him. Plush carpet, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, and at the far end, a pair of ornate double doors. Voss's office. Alarms blared through the building now, strobe lights flashing red. Daniel sprinted down the hallway just as the elevator doors opened behind him. Freeze. He didn't turn. Bullets tore into the wall beside him as he dove through Voss's doors, slamming them shut behind him. The office was empty. No Voss. No Ethan. Just an empty chair behind a polished mahogany desk and the distant wail of sirens from the streets below. Then the click of a safety being disengaged. Should have taken the warning. Daniel knew that voice. He turned slowly. Ethan stood by the window, a pistol leveled at Daniel's chest. His expression was unreadable, but his knuckles were white around the grip. Daniel didn't raise his weapon. "You're really going to do this?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "You left me no choice. Halcyon's using you." Daniel took a careful step forward. "They're setting us both up." A flicker of doubt crossed Ethan's face. Then the door burst open behind Daniel, and three armed guards rushed in, rifles trained. "Stand down, Mercer," the lead guard barked. Daniel didn't move. His eyes stayed locked on Ethan's. "You know what they are? What they've done?" Ethan's finger hovered over the trigger. The guards hesitated, waiting for his order. The silence stretched. Then the window behind Ethan exploded inward. Glass shards rained down as a black-clad figure repelled through the broken window, landing in a crouch. Before anyone could react, two suppressed shots took out the guards nearest the door. Lena straightened, her pistol smoking. Ethan spun toward her, but Daniel was already moving. He tackled Ethan to the ground as another volley of gunfire erupted, this time from the hallway. Move! Lena kicked open a service panel in the wall as bullets tore into the furniture around them. Daniel hauled Ethan up, ignoring his former friend's snarl of protest. The three of them tumbled into the maintenance shaft just as another squad of guards stormed the office. The shaft was pitch black, the only sound their ragged breathing and the distant shouts of pursuit. Ethan ripped free of Daniel's grip. "What the hell is this?" Lena shoved him forward. "Your extraction, you idiot. Now move before they flood the building with gas." Daniel didn't wait for Ethan's response. He led the way down the narrow passage, his mind racing. This wasn't just a betrayal. This was something bigger. And whatever game Halcyon was playing, they were all just pieces on the board. The shaft ended at a ladder leading downward. Lena went first, then Ethan, his movements stiff with anger. Daniel paused at the top, listening. The shouts were getting closer. Then a new sound, the hiss of pressurized canisters being deployed. Lena was right. They were gassing the building. Daniel dropped down the ladder just as the first tendrils of white smoke curled through the shaft above him. The game had changed, and the only way out was through the fire. The maintenance shaft emptied into a sub-basement choked with steam pipes and the constant thrum of industrial generators. Daniel hit the concrete floor first, rolling to absorb the impact before coming up in a crouch, his weapon sweeping the shadows. The air reeked of oil and chlorine, stinging his eyes. Somewhere in the maze of machinery, water dripped in a steady rhythm like a ticking clock. Lena landed beside him, her boots barely making a sound. She immediately moved to cover the rusted metal door at the far end of the room, her pistol held in perfect alignment with her line of sight. Ethan came down last, his controlled descent betraying none of the fury Daniel knew simmered beneath the surface. "You set this up," Ethan accused, rounding on Lena the moment his feet touched ground. His voice was low, dangerous. "That wasn't part of the deal." Lena didn't flinch. "The deal changed when they put a kill order on all three of us." Daniel's finger tensed against his trigger guard. "What's she talking about, Ethan?" Before Ethan could answer, a metallic clang echoed through the chamber. All three weapons snapped toward the sound. The pipes above them groaned as something, or someone, moved through the crawlspace. Lena motioned sharply toward the door. "We need to move. Now." Ethan hesitated, his gaze darting between Daniel and the darkness above them. For a fraction of a second, Daniel saw the old Ethan, the man who'd once carried him 2 miles through enemy fire. Then it was gone, replaced by the cold strategist Halcyon had molded. Another clang, closer this time. Daniel made the decision for them. He grabbed Ethan by the tactical vest and shoved him toward the door. "Move or die. Your choice." They burst into a narrow service tunnel, the concrete walls slick with condensation. Lena took point, moving with the precision of someone who'd memorized every turn. The distant wail of alarms followed them, muffled but persistent. Ethan jerked free from Daniel's grip as they rounded a corner. "You don't understand what you're walking into." "Then explain it," Daniel snapped. A burst of static came from Lena's earpiece. She pressed a finger to it, her pace never slowing. "Extraction in 90 seconds. Northeast dock." Ethan's hand shot out, grabbing her arm. "Who are you working for?" The look Lena gave him could have frozen molten steel. "The people who aren't trying to kill us." She shook free of his grip. "Unlike you." Daniel saw the moment Ethan's control snapped. The former operative moved faster than should have been possible, slamming Lena against the wall with an arm across her throat. His other hand pressed a knife to her ribs. "Last chance," Ethan breathed. "Who sent you?" Daniel didn't intervene. He'd seen this dance before. Ethan's calculated brutality, Lena's uncanny ability to turn weakness into advantage. Sure enough, Lena's knee came up in a vicious arc, forcing Ethan to twist away. Her elbow cracked against his jaw, followed by a palm strike that sent him staggering back. The knife clattered to the floor. Lena scooped it up without breaking stride. "We're leaving. Argue again, and I leave you for Halcyon's cleanup crew." A new sound cut through the tension. Boots on metal grating, coming from the intersection ahead. Lots of boots. Daniel didn't wait to see if the others would follow. He turned down a side passage, his shoulder brushing damp concrete as the tunnel narrowed. The air grew thicker, warmer, carrying the faint tang of salt water. They were nearing the docks. Behind them, a shouted order echoed through the tunnels. Then the unmistakable charging handle of automatic weapons being racked. Lena cursed under her breath. They've sealed the exits. Ethan wiped blood from his split lip. There's another way. Daniel knew that tone, knew what it meant. No, not again. You got a better idea? Ethan challenged. The footsteps grew louder. Closer. Lena checked her watch. 60 seconds to extraction. Daniel made the call. Lead the way. Ethan moved with sudden purpose, taking them down a branch Daniel hadn't noticed, a nearly invisible gap between pipes. The space tightened until they were forced to turn sideways, weapons scraping against rusted metal. Somewhere above, water dripped onto exposed wiring, sending sparks skittering across the ceiling like angry fireflies. The tunnel ended at a maintenance hatch barely large enough to crawl through. Ethan kicked it open, revealing a dizzying drop to black water below. The harbor. After you, Ethan said with grim humor. Daniel didn't hesitate. He dropped into the darkness, the shock of cold water driving the breath from his lungs. The current grabbed him immediately, pulling him toward a concrete pillar. He kicked hard, just avoiding a collision that would have cracked ribs. Lena entered the water with barely a splash, surfacing with her weapon held clear. Ethan came last, his descent less graceful, whether from injury or hesitation. Daniel couldn't tell. A spotlight cut across the water 50 yards to their left. Swim or die, Lena said, and struck out toward a cluster of pilings. Daniel followed, the weight of his gear threatening to drag him under. Every stroke sent fresh needles of pain through his shoulder where a bullet had grazed him during the office fight. Behind him, Ethan's breathing came in ragged gasps, but he kept pace. The spotlight swept past again, closer this time. Daniel ducked beneath the surface, letting the brackish water swallow him whole. When he resurfaced, blinking salt from his eyes, he saw it. A nondescript fishing boat idling just beyond the pilings, its running lights dark. Lena whistled sharply, 3 short bursts. A figure appeared at the boat's railing, silhouetted against the distant city lights. The spotlight found them just as they reached the boat. Go! Daniel shoved Ethan toward the waiting ladder as automatic gunfire churned the water around them. A round grazed his calf, the pain white-hot. He barely felt the hands hauling him aboard as return fire erupted from the boat's deck. The engine roared to life, throwing up a wall of spray as they peeled away from the dock. Daniel rolled onto his back, gasping, as the Halcyon building shrank in the distance. Then he saw the blood. Not his. Not Ethan's. Lena leaned against the gunwale, her fingers pressed to her side where dark red seeped through her tactical vest. Her face was pale but composed. Told you, she managed through clenched teeth. Collateral damage. Ethan reached her first, his medical training overriding whatever animosity remained. He peeled back the vest to reveal a through-and-through wound just above her hip. You're lucky. Lena's laugh was more of a cough. Tell that to Halcyon's board when they find out we took their files. Daniel froze. What files? The boat hit open water, the sudden swell sending a spray of salt water across the deck. Lena's hand went to a waterproof pouch at her belt. When she pulled it free, Daniel recognized the Halcyon insignia stamped across the sealed drive inside. Ethan went very still. That's a suicide mission. Lena's fingers tightened around the drive. No, it's justice. The boat's captain, a grizzled man with a scar across his throat, spat over the side. Save the speeches. We got company. Daniel turned to see a black helicopter cresting the skyline, its searchlights sweeping the harbor. Ethan met Daniel's eyes across the blood-slicked deck. In that moment, all the years between them collapsed into silent understanding. They'd been here before. Outgunned, outnumbered, but never out of options. Daniel reached for the rifle propped against the cabin wall. Lena, what's on that drive? Lena's smile was thin and terrible, proof that Halcyon didn't just want us dead. She pressed the drive into his hand, her fingers cold and slick with blood. They wanted us to disappear. The helicopter's spotlight found them, bathing the deck in blinding white. Somewhere beneath the roar of the engine and the approaching thrum of rotor blades, Daniel heard Ethan load a fresh magazine into his pistol. The game wasn't over yet, but the rules had just changed. The helicopter's spotlight burned like a miniature sun, turning the night sea into a swirling mirror of fractured light. Daniel squinted against the glare, his fingers finding familiar grooves on the rifle's stock. The weapon was older than he preferred, but well-maintained. The captain clearly knew his business. 2 minutes till they're in firing range, the scarred man at the wheel growled. His knuckles were white on the throttle, pushing the fishing boat's ancient engine to its limits. Lena slumped against the cabin wall, her breathing shallow but steady. Ethan had torn a strip from his shirt to bind her wound, the fabric already darkening with blood. His hands moved with clinical precision, but his eyes kept flicking to the approaching aircraft. Daniel chambered around. We can't outrun them. Don't need to. Lena nodded toward a metal case near the stern. Open that. The case held 3 cylindrical devices that made Ethan's breath hitch. Stinger missiles? Where the hell did you? Friends in low places. Lena's grin was all teeth. Think you remember how to use one? The helicopter banked sharply, its side door sliding open to reveal a mounted machine gun. Daniel didn't wait for the gunner to find his range. He slapped the first missile into Ethan's hands. Take the shot. Ethan's fingers moved automatically, extending the launcher's guidance system with practiced ease. But his voice was tight. This isn't just about Halcyon, is it? The first burst of machine gun fire stitched across the water, sending geysers spraying 10 yards off their port side. The boat rocked violently, throwing Daniel against the gunwale. Salt water stung his eyes. Lena coughed, blood flecking her lips. They were never just contractors. The files prove it. Another burst. Closer this time. The boat's radio exploded in a shower of sparks. Ethan shouldered the launcher, his eye pressed to the sight. Then who? The helicopter's spotlight suddenly died. For a heartbeat, the night went completely black. Then a new light flared, a streak of orange fire arcing from somewhere on shore. Down! Daniel tackled Ethan as the missile struck the helicopter's tail rotor. The explosion lit up the harbor, raining burning debris across the waves. The crippled aircraft spun wildly before plunging into the water with a concussive splash. Silence fell, broken only by the boat's laboring engine and Lena's ragged breathing. Ethan stared at the burning wreckage. Who the hell was that? The answer came from the darkness. A sleek speedboat materialized from the shadows, its running lights still off. 3 figures stood at the bow, their faces obscured by tactical masks. The lead figure raised a hand in greeting, 2 fingers extended. A ghost signal from their old unit. Daniel's blood ran cold. Oh hell. Lena struggled to sit upright. You recognize them? Ethan's voice was hollow. That's Team Viper. The speedboat closed the distance with terrifying speed. Now Daniel could make out the details. The matte black body armor, the customized weapons, the absence of any identifying insignia. Team Viper had been Halcyon's most feared wetwork squad. And according to official records, they'd all died 18 months ago in a training accident. The lead figure pulled off his mask. Daniel hadn't seen Captain Vance's face since the funeral they'd held for him. The scar bisecting his left eyebrow was new. Long time no see, boys. Vance's smile didn't reach his dead eyes. Heard you've been making trouble. Daniel kept his rifle trained on Vance's chest. You're supposed to be dead. Funny thing about that. Vance's team fanned out across the speedboat's deck, weapons ready, but not yet aimed. Halcyon's got a funny definition of retirement. Lena's fingers dug into Daniel's arm. The files, she whispered. They know about the files. Vance's head tilted like a predator catching a scent. Hand over the drive, and we'll make it quick. Orders are to bring your bodies in, but I owe you that much at least. Ethan's launcher was still trained on the speedboat. You really want to test which of us is faster? Vance sighed. Always the hard way. He raised a hand, and the sea erupted around them. Daniel barely had time to register the twin rooster tails of water before the torpedoes struck. The first hit the stern, lifting the fishing boat nearly vertical. The second blew out the engine in a fireball of twisted metal. The concussion threw Daniel overboard, the cold water swallowing his scream. Underwater, the world became a chaos of bubbles and burning debris. Daniel fought toward the surface, his lungs burning. When he broke through, gasping, the scene was apocalyptic. The fishing boat was gone, just flaming wreckage and an expanding oil slick. Of the captain, there was no sign. Ethan, Lena. Daniel spun in the water, his boots kicking against the sinking debris. A hand broke the surface 20 feet away. Ethan, dragging an unconscious Lena with him. The speedboat idled nearby, Vance watching them with detached interest. Last chance, Mercer. Daniel treaded water, calculating angles, distances. The Stinger launcher was gone. His rifle was sinking somewhere beneath him. All he had left was the drive in his pocket and a knife in his boot. Then the sea lit up. At first Daniel thought it was another explosion. But the light came from beneath them, a vast, glowing expanse rising from the depths. The water itself seemed to shimmer, the waves turning to liquid mercury. Vance's composure cracked. What the? The speedboat lifted clean out of the water, suspended in a column of impossible light. Daniel had one glimpse of Viper Team's terrified faces before the light intensified to blinding white. When his vision cleared, the speedboat, and everyone on it, was simply gone. Just smooth water where they'd been. Ethan's voice was raw with shock. Did you just see? A metallic hum cut him off. Daniel turned slowly to face the source of the sound. The submarine breached the surface like some primordial leviathan, its black hull shedding water in cascading sheets. It was like no sub Daniel had ever seen, sleek and angular, its surface absorbing the moonlight rather than reflecting it. A hatch hissed open on the forward deck. 3 figures emerged. They wore no masks, no visible weapons. Their movements were eerily synchronized as they stepped onto the hull, their boots leaving no prints on the wet metal. The leader was a woman with close-cropped silver hair and eyes that seemed to glow faintly in the dark. When she spoke, her voice carried perfectly across the water despite the distance. Daniel Mercer, Ethan Cole, Lena Carter. She paused, as if tasting their names. You've seen behind the curtain. Now you have a choice. Drown in the lie, or swim in the truth. Lena coughed weakly in Ethan's arms. Who are you? The woman smiled. The people Halcyon was created to hunt. She extended a hand toward the open hatch. Welcome to the real war. Daniel looked at Ethan, saw his own disbelief mirrored there. The submarine hummed softly, its hull vibrating with barely contained power. Somewhere beneath them, the ocean currents shifted, as if the sea itself was holding its breath. The choice should have been impossible. But as Daniel glanced back at the burning wreckage that had been their last hope, he realized there was only one move left. He began swimming toward the submarine. After a heartbeat's hesitation, Ethan followed, Lena's limp form held tight against his chest. The silver-haired woman watched them approach, her expression unreadable. As Daniel reached the hull, she spoke again, so softly he almost missed it. Halcyon was just the beginning. What comes next will rewrite history. Then the hatch swallowed them whole, and the sea closed over their heads like a secret being kept. The submarine's interior was nothing like Daniel expected. Cold steel and sterile white light gave way to warm amber panels, curved walls that pulsed faintly with blue circuitry, and an air that smelled faintly of ozone and something earthy, like rain on dry soil. The door sealed behind them with a whisper, cutting off the outside world completely. Ethan set Lena down on a low bench as the silver-haired woman motioned for a medic, a young man with piercing green eyes who moved with unsettling precision. He didn't speak as he examined Lena's wound, pressing a device to her side that made her gasp before the bleeding stopped instantly. Daniel didn't lower his guard. Who are you people? The woman studied him, her gaze weighing more than just his words. We're the ones Halcyon was built to erase. She gestured to a holographic screen that flickered to life beside her, displaying a symbol Daniel had seen only in classified files, a serpent coiled around a sword. You've uncovered part of the truth. Now you'll see the rest. Ethan's voice was rough. And if we refuse? The woman smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Then you'll disappear like everyone else who learned too much. The screen shifted, revealing footage of covert operations, black site prisons, and faces Daniel recognized, soldiers, politicians, journalists, all marked with a single red stamp, terminated. Lena stirred, her fingers curling into fists. You're saying Halcyon's been silencing people for years? Not just silencing. The woman tapped the screen, zooming in on a facility buried deep in a mountain range. Experimenting. Rewriting history. You 3 were next. Daniel's chest tightened. He'd spent years thinking he was fighting corruption. But this was something darker. Something he couldn't walk away from. Ethan exhaled sharply, running a hand through his damp hair. So what now? The woman stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. Now you choose. Walk away and spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder, or join us and burn Halcyon to the ground. Silence stretched between them, thick with the weight of the decision. Daniel looked at Ethan, really looked at him. The betrayal, the anger, the years of brotherhood buried beneath it all. Then at Lena, her jaw set, her eyes blazing with defiance even in pain. He knew his answer before he spoke. "We're in." The woman nodded, satisfied. "Good." She turned, leading them deeper into the submarine's belly. "Then let's show you the war you never knew existed." As the corridor swallowed them whole, Daniel realized something. He wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. He was fighting for the truth. And that was a war worth dying for. The submarine descended into the abyss, its hull humming with quiet power. On the surface, the fire from the wreckage flickered out, leaving only dark water and the faintest ripple where they'd been. Somewhere above, a satellite adjusted its lens, scanning the empty sea. But there was nothing left to find. Moral of the story: the greatest battles aren't fought with bullets, but with the choice to stand when the world tries to erase you.